Welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast with your host, Jason Ballard. It's a real privilege to have you back. We've got a really good show today for you. There's a lot of people out there that struggle. You know, they may have fears of success, fears of change. They may have ego. They may have pride. They may be stuck in their careers as an executive or a manager or leader. They may be a business owner feeling alone on an island and nobody gets them and they have nobody to talk to. Everybody in their business or their personal career development, they do run into things. They just don't know what to do. And it keeps them up at night. They think about it all the time. And they just need access to leaders. And there's a lack of leaders out there. There's a lack of leadership out there. When I call true, genuine leader of leaders kind of leadership. We're kind of witnessing that here in this day and age with the Great Resignation. You know, that is centered a lot around leadership.
Absolutely.
And how to deal with these challenges of our world that we live in today. And so I wanted to create this podcast to connect with people that are out there that may not know me, that may not have a mentor or a boss or somebody that cares about them, is a channel for them to connect, for them to feel like, wow, this guy gets it. He's humble, he's down to earth, he understands a lot of these things that help people be successful, helps them get out of their own head, get out of their own way, and take a chance, take a risk. Because, man, I'm telling you, Joel, as a guy from small town nowhere, not even a blinker light at that town, in a redneck little town, if I can leave there and I can have the opportunity to go out in this big world and achieve some of the things that I've been able to achieve with a lot of, blessings from the good Lord and a lot of good mentors and leaders around me, anybody can do it. And so this is just a passion of mine. I'm like, people just need to know resources, tools, material, things are out there for them. They just got to connect to it. And I hope Soar Higher business podcast is an outlet for them. You cannot give away what you don't have. So as a leader, if you're not healthy, mentally, physically, spiritually, if you aren't sticking to a schedule, if you aren't setting the example by how you show up in your attitude and your behavior and your positivity, and you have a plan and you're proactive and you're doing all the right things to be out in front of your team, leading them, motivating them, developing them, investing in them, helping them grow, helping them be successful. If you yourself are struggling to do that on an individual level, you'll never do it with a team. Therefore, you limit the organization's opportunities. And so what I would ask you to do as an individual leader is to create a block schedule. Look at different aspects of your life, your health. Are you making time to be healthy? Meaning go to the gym, walk around the neighborhood, get on an exercise bike, do something where you can exercise yourself at an adequate level. Nutrition and eating right. Rest. A lot of people think about their health. They don't think about rest and getting enough sleep at night and being able to do things to decompress during the day so their minds and their bodies can refresh and recharge so they can be their absolute best every single day. And so I challenge leaders to create a block schedule where you can program time individually to exercise, to eat right, to manage yourself spiritually, mentally, where you make time to develop yourself and read books and do things that allow you to stay sharp and decompress and manage your stress. Managing stress is really, really important. Also, on an individual level, are you making time to make the right investments with the right people? Are you spending time with the right people in the right ways? Like your family, your friends, your church family, your coworkers, your neighbors down the road, whatever that may be. Are you making time to do all those things? And so I would ask that you prioritize your life, discipline, and create a kind of a cadence and a schedule of things on a block schedule where you just program that time in to where it fills up the calendar with your personal priorities, for which nobody else can take that time from you. All of the other time that you have available during the day is allocated to the workplace, allocated to other things that are second, third, and fourth in priority. That will help you individually do the things you need to do in a balanced manner that helps you set the example for other people and give you the capacity to lead in bigger, better ways, because as a leader, much will be demanded of you and your time, the more people that fall underneath you in the organization. Okay, so number one is personal rhythm and cadence. Get yourself personally in a new rhythm and a new gear that's prioritized around you being the best you can be. Once that happens, you can then lead others to the best of your ability, which gets into part number two, organizational cadence and rhythm. One of the things that I would highly recommend, I've been using this for many, many years myself, and I know a lot of other leaders do as well, and that's creating an annual schedule, an annual calendar of things that you do on a weekly basis, things you need to do on a monthly basis, quarterly, and annual basis. Have an annual calendar of those things. On a weekly basis, I usually recommend a 30-minute stand-up call on Monday mornings at 8:30 with your immediate leadership team to focus on the priorities of the week. Each and every week, you should have brand new priorities that are things that must get done that week before the week ends. I also maybe recommend on a weekly basis, you have a staff meeting and you look at all the different aspects of your business, HR, finance, projects, operations, etc., and get feedback from all of your leaders on all of these different things, so you always have your finger on the pulse. When you think of doing things on a monthly or quarterly basis, you're looking at your marketing, you're looking at your sales results and revenue, you're looking at your cash flow, you're looking at your projects and the different aspects of the projects and what phase they're in, whether they're on track, off track, and or if you need to intervene and figure out how to get them back on track if they're not. Another thing you can do on a monthly/quarterly basis is be looking at your metrics, your key performance indicators of all the different areas of your business for which you can evaluate performance and course correct throughout the year before things go too far too long and you end up having to do damage control on things that have gotten off track and off into the ditch. Things you can do on an annual level. Well, one, do a end of year review and understand how well you're doing or not doing, how well you're tracking on your strategic plan, how well are you tracking on your goals, what needs to happen to ensure that gets done before the end of the year. Another thing you do on an annual basis is hopefully do employee evaluations, hand out performance bonuses, awards, a recognition of your team and your team members and who's outstanding, who's gone over and above to really move the needle in your company. Those aren't all the things, but those are just some examples of things that you need to think about that are programmatically consistent year after year, week after week, month after month, that you can predict and you can schedule, and you can put those things on the calendar and proactively be leading and managing way ahead of time. If you're a leader, I also recommend you make time maybe once a week or maybe once every couple weeks and do things like we talked about in our last podcast episode of leading and managing by walking around, which is based on the Lincoln on Leadership book. Get out, program time on your schedule as a leader to get out of the office, get off of email, get off your phone, and just walk around and check on your people, talk to the people, ask them how they're doing, follow up on things going on in their lives, their personal lives, their professional lives. One question you should always be asking your people is, what are the top 2 frustrations you may be experiencing, that if I were able to take those off your plate and help you resolve those, that would allow you to move the needle even better in the company today, make your job easier, right? If you consistently ask your people those types of questions, I assure you, you will be their favorite boss. You will get a lot more work done, and you will keep your finger on the pulse of things throughout the course of the weeks and months to drive excellence in your company. And so cadence is important, getting yourself and your people in a rhythm where everybody's on the same page, everybody's in the same system, everybody's marching to the same beat, individually and collectively, and being disciplined to that process, being disciplined to the schedule, being disciplined to executing in those ways will take you farther than you ever even thought possible. The synergy, the harmony that comes out of that closes a lot of gaps on communication and expectations and delivery of your goods and products to your important customers. A lot of things happen kind of automatically as a result of being disciplined to that process. There are really 3 keys of leadership that I taught them. One, how to motivate and influence people to do things. Even though they may not understand it, they may not like it, they may not agree with it, you still have to get people to move from point A to point B in leadership. And your job as a leader is to find out ways to motivate them, to get them to do their absolute best and be excited about it. Sell it as if it was their own idea. Another thing I taught them was leaders grow new leaders. And what we discovered through this process is that, John was not setting the best example. How he was interacting with his leadership, his outburst of anger and frustration, how he was responding to those things did not set a really good example of people around him that he was supposed to be supervising and managing. That was very, very powerful. We talked about how as a leader you need to think about yourself as like a fish in a fishbowl. Everybody's watching everything you do, everything you say, everything matters. Everything's being watched. And people, just your tone in your voice to the facial expressions you may have. As a leader, everybody's looking to you and is modeling off of you. And what he found is he was really struggling to put himself above himself, to set the example as a leader and think differently about how to engage these new challenges he wasn't used to dealing with. And so we went through leadership. We went through how to delegate, how to follow up. We went through priority management, time management. People say, "Oh, I'm really good at managing my time," and he pushed back and he's like, "Oh, I'm really good. Everything I do is on my calendar." And I said, "Okay, great, but how do you know what's on your calendar is the priority? How do you know you're even working on the right things every day that's really matters the most?" And so taught him about priority management. We talked about executive presence, setting the example. We talked about communication. I taught him how to communicate in different environments with different people. There's a concept called omnidirectional communications where you have to communicate differently up to your boss, differently than you communicate down to your employees, differently than you communicate with your peers and partners out there. Omnidirectional communications. He had never learned that before. He's a master of it now. But you have to think and be very intentional about those kinds of things, or you get lost in all of that. I also taught him how to adapt to different situations and different kinds of people. When he engaged his boss that he didn't agree with in many ways and had a lot of issues with him, he didn't adapt to that boss very well. He didn't adapt to some other people very well. And I used, tools like DISC assessments to break that down in showing him how his DISC profile needs to adapt to other people's DISC profiles. The whole concept of treating people how they need to be treated. He was thinking about it all from his personal perspective. Well, I see things this way. I feel this way. Therefore, I'm going to project myself in this manner because I think that's going to get me what I'm looking for. And actually, it was counterproductive for him. It caused problems and caused waves for him. And so that in and of itself was a very, very powerful session. I think he learned more about people and leading people just out of those sessions alone, in addition to the other things we went through, like, leadership and your leadership style and your executive presence and your vision as a leader and how you communicate as a leader. All those things are important, but how to adapt to different people and different environments, because the world's fast-paced and it's complicated. And if you can't recognize, the situation you're in as things evolve and how to adapt to that, man, people really, really struggle to succeed as successfully as possible in that situation. So I ended up spending a year and a half coaching this young man. Got to know him really, really well. At the end of this process, he was calm, he was cool, he was confident. He was hitting on all cylinders. He had actually overcome his challenges as a new supervisor, a new manager, a new leader. And he transformed into almost a different kind of person. People would look at him and say, "Man, what a difference. He is completely different. What's going on with him? How did he change? How did he overcome this?" I mean, he was really, really struggling. He was on the verge of being fired. And so there's a good ending to this story. John ended up, in his personal life, he had neglected a lot of things in his personal life. He was married, didn't have any kids though, and he was at a point where because he was having so many challenges at work in the beginning when I first met him, that he was struggling to keep up. So he worked longer hours. He poured his heart and soul into work, and he wasn't very balanced, which caused problems in his marriage and his friendships and his family life. He hadn't seen his family in a long time. Well, at the end of this process, he became a leader. He changed and adapted in wonderful ways, but he ended up reconnecting with his family. He ended up reconnecting with, his mom who was sick, who needed him. And he was in a better place to support her. Then he sends me a picture of an ultrasound. Him and his wife had been trying for years to get pregnant. And after all this was said and done, they ended up getting pregnant. They now have a beautiful baby girl, and he just going through the process of having a baby changed John in and of itself. And so I tell you this story today because this is a very common story that a lot of people go through. A lot of people feel, a lot of people experience, whether they're the employee going through this or somebody up the chain in the management, that's an upper level management that's trying to deal with this. This is real. This impacts people's lives in major ways. These are easily preventable mistakes if you just think through how you're conducting your business, how you are creating the next round of leaders and developing a succession plan to make sure that people are prepared going through the process. John was ill prepared. I think the leadership had good intentions, but were busy and had a lot of things going on, and they just did not usher this the right way. Well, John was lucky that he was thinking about things, knew things weren't right, happened to reach out and get help. If you are out there today and you're going through some struggles, you're one of these people that was a go-to person that was put in a tough position that you're ill-equipped to handle, not trained to handle. If you're a upper-level management dealing with somebody that you're trying to take care of, have good heart, good intentions, do not just willy-nilly put people in serious management roles that aren't prepared, because what made them successful as a go-to technician doesn't make them successful as a manager, as a supervisor, or any other role. And so you have to carefully think through that. And so I would say get help. If you don't have an HR team or groups of people that can help you assess people and really understand where they're at and see where the gaps are between where they are developmentally and what the expectations of the role is you're trying to put them in, get clarity on those things before you pull the trigger and cause a lot of problems in the company, cause a lot of frustration and time and money trying to deal with things the hard way. John was lucky that he had enough, forethought to think about this and reach out to me as a coach and get help, get training, get expertise, get advice, get mentorship, get, all of the tools and resources that we were able to provide them. Those things are out there. All you have to do is look for them. If you need help, you need access to resources, feel free to reach out to our organization, soarhirecoaching.com. We're happy to help you as much as we can or point you in the right direction. We're not maybe right for everybody all the time, but if we're not, we'll point you in the right direction. But this is a kind of a sad story that turned into a happy story. This story had a good ending. John ended up, having, restoring his balance of life with his family. He's much happier. He's got a new daughter now. He's spending more time with his extended family members and has moved on into some other management roles and is now, years later, in a VP level role. I want you to think about this story. If it resonates with you, feel free to reach out to us in the show notes and send us your thoughts, your concerns. If we can reach out and help you in any way, feel free to do that at soarhighercoaching.com. And I hope this episode kind of touches on some heartstrings and helps you think through some of these things a little bit differently and how to maybe go through these in a better, more effective way. And so appreciate your time today. Always great to spend time with the audience. Always love getting your feedback. This is some feedback that I've received and following up with you to hopefully help you with tools that you may or may not have at your disposal. So that's all for today's show. Look forward to talking with you next week as we talk about some more leadership and training things that folks are working on going forward. So talk to you next week.